Hi, hi everybody. My name is Grace Bubeck, and this is another live conversation under the umbrella name of Living from Love. And my guest today is Karen Richards. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Grace. Wonderful to be here.
Yes, wonderful to have you, Karen. I usually, it takes me a bit of time to get round to inviting people. And until I do, people show up every so often just to remind me, it's like, oh, need to invite her or need to invite him. So you showed up quite a number of times before I actually got around to connecting with you. This is how it goes.
Yes.
So one of the things that interested me about speaking to you, and that I felt was interesting in terms of the topic that we agreed on, which is the movement of awakeness, is that you had a very powerful and very deep and clear awakening. And the way things unfolded after was quite dramatic too, in the sense that you were ill for quite a long time, chronically.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of worth knowing that awakening at points may just unfold that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get into what
that
way is, maybe a little bit to start with. So why don't you tell us, Karen, and we'll start with that.
Yeah, well, I was just going through a lot of suffering. Life had been extremely challenging in the early years of my life, and my early adult years were sort of continuation of that drama, I suppose we could say. And I was working as a nurse, a job that I loved, but I was in a role that was very demanding. And I just found myself getting more and more tired, more and more stressed out. Lots of things in my life weren't going well. In fact, there was no area of my life really that had any peace or calmness to it. It was just very chaotic. And I remember just reflecting now, maybe 18 months before the awakening experience happened, there was a real seeking of trying to find a way out of it, just trying to find some peace somewhere. I went for 3 jobs, thinking maybe a new job would be the answer, and I came second at interview every time. I got this job. And
that was obviously not happening.
Close, but no cigar. So there was other things going on, and I was in a very unhappy relationship that got a lot of drama to it as well, and family life was very turbulent with my relatives, and it just seemed that there was no peace anywhere. So I guess was carrying on and getting more and more tired, and I discussed all of this with a friend at the time, and he, this is some 18 months later, and he presented me with a recording that was a John Wheeler interview. And I had no idea what this interview was going to be about. He didn't even say what the topic was, really. He just said that he wanted me to listen to this interview. And when the interview was played, which was a recording, a radio broadcast, and it had several commercial breaks. After the first commercial break, after 10 minutes or so, I just looked at him and said, he says, we are awareness. And my friend looked at me and said, yes, you are. And in that moment, those words, "Yes, you are," seemed to point to something beyond the words. And it was almost like there was a complete dropping into and a falling away of the identification with the separate self. And I remember sitting there just completely void of any thought, just in absolute clarity and absolute awe of what is here. And it was just awe-inspiring and amazing, and just shattered everything, every thought I'd had about who I am and what life is. And it was just really an incredible moment. And that from that point on, there was a great unraveling, shall we say, because we could describe it in terms of the outer experience. Of course, there's no outer, no inner, but it was as if the outer experience had to match up with the inner realization. And in order for that to happen, because life was so dysfunctional in so many ways, in just about every aspect of life, there had to be a rearranging of things. And it was the beginning of a long period of illness. I was struggling in December, and this happened. I'd been struggling up probably for a couple of years up until the December. Then the awakening happened the following February. And then the illness seemed to get worse and worse and worse. I lost my job, relationships dissolved, lots of changes, lots of challenges. And it was almost like life removed me from the majority of circumstances that I'd found myself in, and the house became a bit like a monastery. It was like a cave almost, I suppose, where I was almost completely cut off from the rest of the world, and just doing the basic things really to keep the body going, so sleep and food and things like that. Yeah, lots of rearranging, I suppose we could term it. Lots of things disappearing, lots of people disappearing, lots of roles that I used to do disappearing. And there was a real struggle with it, just looking back in the early days.
How do you mean? How do you mean a struggle? In what ways was it a struggle?
Well, the body was so exhausted, and the mind wasn't working. So it's almost like I had treacle in my mind and just no energy to barely function. And there was a suffering with that initially, trying to function, even though I wasn't physically able to, trying to continue to do certain things, even though I wasn't up to it, and fighting to try and regain some of what was lost, until eventually there was just a surrender to what was happening.
So, Karen, can I just interrupt? Because, somehow that just keeps speaking to me that that's what's worth exploring with you today. When you say you struggled, and it's like there's an image that's used, certainly in the Asian traditions, that when you turn off a fan, it keeps going for a while.
Yeah.
And so even after awakening, what you're describing is that the old tendencies, the old habits of keeping going, were still going. They were still turning. They were still churning. And so somehow it's like the illness, what it looks like is that the illness came into your life as a way of making it impossible for you for the fan to continue turning.
Yes.
And the mind was just like, it didn't function anymore. So, I mean, you know, you just couldn't use it. So what troubles most people, you know, most of the time basically had kind of been shut down almost completely, so it couldn't trouble you, but you still kept going, you know, somehow something still kept going.
Yeah, there was just looking at that now, there was so much energy here before. And this has been one of the major adjustments, and major things to come to terms with, I suppose, because I had enough energy for 4 people. You know, I managed a home, I worked full time, I had a very busy social life, I was always helping my elderly relatives that needed support, shopping and things like that. So I had no space. Didn't actually need a lot of sleep either, maybe 6 hours or something. So there was no stillness at all. So something pretty major had to happen in order to really transform all of that. Yeah, it seemed like it was the beginning of really seeing things very differently, and instead of reacting and being a victim, which was a strong pattern here, was seeing all of those victim tendencies and all of the ways we create our own suffering and taking responsibility for that, which was a very painful journey, actually. There was a lot of struggle with it, and a lot of ruthless and honest looking, and really taking responsibility for creating my own mess, which of course is wholly it's wholly innocent. We are a product of our conditioning, and we are reacting from our conditioning, and so all of that is innocent. But once we see it, we are responsible then for what we do about it. And so there was a real commitment here for truth. That was what was most important. That was very clear. And so I wanted truth at any price. And that was what carried me through that very, very difficult period. And it went on, I would say, quite acutely for about 5 years after the initial awakening. There's still subtle things that get seen.
Yes.
But
so Karen, sorry, I'm just going to kind of come in there, because if that's okay with you, actually, what I would like to do is bring in my own history and unfolding, which is very different from yours. In the sense that I had no, you know, awakening happened very gradually. And the first kind of, you know, there were all kinds of kind of light bulbs going off at different points. And more importantly for me, it was a history of heart openings. And illness, actually accidents and illnesses came in after I had met my teacher, Gangaji.
Okay.
And you know, it's so interesting because one of the things she talks about is stopping, which is a way of simply just opening out from, you know, the narrow mind into awakeness.
Right.
And she speaks of that as stopping. So one of the things that happened in my life was that I had 2 accidents, one after the other, 6 weeks apart. One totaled my car.
Right.
And threw me into a a fatigue that lasted for a few months, I would say. So I had to stop physically. I was stopped physically too.
Mm-hmm.
And I could, I was kind of awake enough to see that this was, surrendering to that wasn't difficult, because I could see that that was what was needed.
Right.
But the surrendering had at that point already become a way of life for me. At the time, for me it came under the heading of saying yes instead of no.
Okay.
Spotting the resistance and simply opening, simply saying yes, here it is, that's it. And then, just as I was getting better and getting back on my feet and starting to work again, I found out I had cancer, breast cancer.
Oh.
And it turned out it was 2 episodes. And, the illness was just more undoing for me. And the first time I struggled a lot, because I was totally against the medical system. I was in alternative healing myself.
Okay.
And I just couldn't see myself being treated by doctors. So my whole worldview, whatever was left of it, being an alternative practitioner. And that had to be undone too. And that didn't happen without a lot of struggling. That was a really difficult one for me. And so it's like, and looking back, I can see that both episodes of cancer came in as just ways of undoing stuff, stuff that was still churning around.
Right.
So it's interesting because I didn't have the very powerful, awakening experience that you had, but somehow it looks to me like illness had a similar place in just coming in and undoing stuff.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because what came to mind as you were speaking about your experience with doctors, just briefly there, it was almost like I came from the other extreme.
Yes, I mean, so interesting, isn't it?
Completely indoctrinated into the system of the medical profession and believing in pharmaceutical medications, and they have their place, but really it's far better to keep the body ill through not ill. The drugs keep the body ill in a lot of situations, don't they? But
yes, I knew all about that, of course.
yes, and if you keep the body well, you don't need them in the at all. So
yes.
Yeah, it was almost like my belief in the healthcare system delayed my recovery for about 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because you kept looking for solutions there?
Yeah, I kept looking to the doctors to help me, and in the end I saw 4 endocrinologists and 9, 10 GPs, and I think I would have died physically if I'd continued to listen to them. It was almost like I got a shock, and I had to, with how ill I was, and had to just take matters into my own hands. And when I took matters into my own hands, answers started coming and the right treatment started coming. So yeah, it was almost like I had to let go of that and see things from a different vantage point, and realize certain things about what's actually going on, and that money is ruling care, and certain attitudes are not helpful towards people's health and recovery. So yeah, it was a big wake-up call for me, from a big investment of my life, 16, 20 years of working within that system.
Yes.
Realizing when I needed support, the system didn't get me well. So I needed to look outside of it in order to start my healing journey. Yeah, I feel...
Karen, this is so interesting because it's almost as if safety for you was in the medical system, and for me was in the alternative healing world. And your safety had to be deconstructed, and mine had to be deconstructed too.
Yes.
Just from different sides,
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, really, really fascinating. And just the limitations of knowledge within the system was really highlighted for me.
Yes. Yes.
Quite a shock.
I mean, I was self alternatively, and I failed. It failed, and in the end, I had to have surgery. I could see that. I mean, there's yeah, it's like, and this is what's interesting about the movement of awakeness, which is also the movement of life.
Yeah.
It kind of has a way of bringing us right to those places where we are stuck.
Yes.
Stuck in certain beliefs because they happen to be there, or because we happen to have some investment in them, like health, illness. There's a lot invested in embracing the medicine that we believe in.
It's so interesting as well, because what I've experienced, and the body's still quite deconditioned, it's taken a long time. 6 months ago I found out I had a functional B12 deficiency, so I only recently started treatment for that, which has made a major difference. But the muscles are still weak, and there needs to be sort of a rehabilitation in terms of strength and stamina and that kind of thing. But it's been absolutely amazing journey, just from the perspective of feeling good in my body before, going through a very long period. I hear some people complaining about a cold and they're ill for 3 days. Try being ill for 8 years. Feeling exhausted and fatigued and having all of those issues. But now when I feel good in this body, I really appreciate it. It's almost like being given a new body or a new experience, because when you're well and you feel well all the time, it's the normal state. You don't actually know the difference. It's totally taken for granted. And this journey has really, it's almost like starting again. It's a strange thing to try and articulate, really, but being able to have energy and feeling that I can do things now is really amazing for me. Really amazing. Real gratitude in it, real appreciation for the wonder of it all, the amazing experience of actually getting to live life as a body in the world. But seeing it and experiencing it from a different viewpoint almost.
Yes, what comes to me is that somehow I don't know whether I'm putting that into, whether this is an interpretation or it's a truthful reflection. Somehow, it feels like being in the healthcare system was all about controlling life, and this is actually about appreciating it. Seeing the gift of it and being willing to be in the however it unfolds, I mean, illness or not illness, health or not health, energy or no energy.
Yes, but it's so fascinating as well from my experience. Without my nursing background, training, knowledge, I don't feel that I would have been able to get through what I've gone through either. There's a kind of another perspective to it as well. It's almost like I had to nurse myself as well. And some of that knowledge proved useful in that process.
Yes. And because also you had to kind of do your own research about your condition and
yes. But it's still useful today. It's not been a wasted experience.
How do you feel it's useful today?
That's a really good question. But just the skills I have in maintaining health, there's a support to that that doesn't reach for convention, that looks to common sense first. But the skills that I learned are still very valid. So, it's a difficult one to try and describe, really, but recognizing perhaps when somebody's not well and supporting them in a way that maximizes, I suppose, or gives potential to their recovery without going down a certain route with it, which my training would have induced, I suppose. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to look at.
And that to yourself as much as to others, I imagine.
Yes.
Recognizing when you need to look after yourself.
Oh, that was a huge lesson in my post-awakening journey that I had to get to grips with fairly early on, because the conditioning that happened here was all about taking care of others, to the point where I completely ignored my own needs, and I felt guilty for having needs. It was like I wasn't allowed to have any. So there was a real ruthless looking at that, which was very, very painful. And at first, feeling guilty about taking care of myself, which of course is quite ludicrous. But there was a lot of guilt that needed to be looked at in respect of that. I mean, that conditioning even manifested in my choice of career. Obviously, nursing, you can't, what kind of career can you take where your needs don't even enter into the equation? So it was a real learning curve in that regard, and it's a balance, isn't it? We're often, if we're coming from that place of unconditioned giving, it can look very good on the surface. We're so kind and caring for others, but in it there are hidden needs. I'm doing this to feel loved, or I'm doing this to feel appreciated or needed. So there's an agenda operating in it. It's not pure. It's not simply responding because that's what's needed right now. There's I want in it somewhere. So it was really difficult to look at that.
Karen, I recognize the need to look at that, because that need is there in any of the helping professions, obviously.
Yeah.
But I would say it's totally true what you say, that it needs to be seen that there are needs that get met kind of indirectly that way, and there's an agenda that's not about helping others.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, I really feel it's so important to appreciate that there's also truth in that choice of profession. And the truth is that somehow, you know, to me, it's a hard truth. It's knowing the beauty of love that expresses in giving and in taking care of others, in helping others.
Yeah.
You know, and that to me is truth calling. That to me is love calling, even if it's distorted because the awakeness isn't there, you know, to see clearly where the distortion comes in. But there's also truth, you know, there's love in there, you know, that's real. You know, I mean, that can't be overlooked either. It's very easy to dismiss all of it as self-interested, but that to me is not true. How would you see that?
That's an interesting question. I never really, in those moments where I've had moments, of course, many times where I've just been with a patient and there's been no agenda operating. It's just been meeting that person. Yes. And totally forgetting yourself. And I've had many, many moments. So I can understand what you mean. Yeah. There's one particular moment coming to mind where I was nursing a guy that had had a serious head injury. And he'd survived the intensive care unit, was on the high dependency unit and was unable to speak, had severe cognitive impairment as a consequence of this crash. But talking with him, I knew there was something in him that was recognizing what I was saying. And you know, moments like that, it's like we meet ourselves, don't we? We meet ourselves right there.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it at the time, but I can see it now as we're having this conversation, that that's what was happening. Yeah, there's a real beauty there. There's fleeting moments of that.
Yes, and you know, even what you're describing, you know, that tendency to do too much, it's like, you know, when being flows powerfully, you know, through the heart, there's a lot of energy there. I mean, think of people like Amma, you know, and she doesn't stop for like, you know, 2 days. Maybe not 2 days, but you know how powerful energy can flow when it's not impeded by.
It's really interesting you talking
about conditioning, and you know, that experience of that flow of love through us. You know, there's this idea that it flows through us, you know, through this body, because there's an identity there that says this is me. So it's more restricted, but the experience of that flow can still be very powerful. And very, we know when we're in that flow, don't we?
Yeah, it's interesting because even though this physicality has been seriously depleted of energy, there has been moments where it seems that I'm required to do something. Situation when I was in India and I had severe dysentery for about 10 days and I couldn't really leave my room, but I had satsang scheduled. So a friend came and took me in a rickshaw to the meeting, and for 2 hours I didn't need to leave and I had the energy to do it. And then afterwards I just went back to bed and collapsed. But it's like there is this capacity to meet the needs of the moment, irrespective of what seems to be happening physically. Yeah, I've seen that many times.
Yes, yes. It's very interesting, and I guess I don't know what I'm getting at is that, that awakeness can be there kind of in fleeting moments. And, or, to some extent. And, with somebody like you, where awakeness is very fully there, still it can be moments where the body's incapacitated and moments where it isn't.
Yeah. And it has no impact on being.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing to know that experientially, that it actually has nothing to do with the physicality at all. It's another misconception, isn't it, about what awakening is. There's so many
Can
ideas.
you say more about that?
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear that.
Yes, can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, people seem to come with this checklist about what awakening means and what experience will be like after it supposedly happened, and very difficult to convey to the separated mind that awakening isn't personal, and that it doesn't look a particular way, that it is what it is, and it's spontaneous and it arises in the moment, and it looks however it looks, and it isn't associated with any physical form. So yeah, it's fascinating, but it's seen how it's seen, and there's nothing. It doesn't matter how clear the articulation is about what this is, because it's being seen through those filters. So those filters seem to block. So it's finding a way to bypass those apparent blocks, if that's what's needed.
I've kind of lost you there, Karen, because somehow I don't know whether it's on my end or your end. You got kind of the transmission wasn't very good.
Okay.
Technically. So, and also I'm not sure I totally got what you said. So maybe you could try and say it in a different way. Maybe I'm the only one who didn't get it, but maybe I'm not.
There seems to be just a complete blankness here at the moment. I can't even recall what we were talking about. It's been cut off somehow. Checklist to do with awakening? Is that where we were, maybe?
Let's just take the blankness. Maybe we've talked enough about that. And maybe we could just both take a moment and see where we want to go from here.
Sure.
Okay. I'll just be quiet for a moment. What comes is that maybe we've just done enough talking about. And it was time to come back to this now.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And I so appreciate you being here, you know.
I love any opportunity to share about this and, you know, be of service, really, to help clarify any doubts or confusion that may be present for anyone watching with us. I know I had many doubts and confusions that arose subsequently, and I didn't have a teacher, so I had to work through that somehow.
So maybe it's time to open the floor to
sure,
people
let's
who are
do that.
watching.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So I haven't posted the link for people to join the Hangout. There's
Okay.
a delay in terms of people joining the Hangout or asking questions, because the broadcast is just a few seconds later than our actual live conversation. So what I'll do is I'll just post the link. And then we'll see what questions there are. So just to invite people, if you do have questions, you can either write them on the YouTube thread. Click on the link that I just posted on the comment thread, and you can come onto the Hangout, ask your question to Karen live. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Just look whether there is any question that has been posted, but there hasn't been so far. So let's see. Maybe I'll just share something myself that seems to be a theme for me right now.
Okay.
And have you respond to that. And the theme is that somehow, you know, the movement of awakeness is really the movement of life, you know, as it unfolds in each moment, through us, through our lives, you know, through insights, realizations, you know, things that we see clearly that we haven't seen before, that we're able to change. All of that. And you know, it just seems here like so Jim, I'm just going to mute your mic until we get to you, okay? There's somebody just joined us. So it seems like how do I put this? Actually, how total or how gradual the awakening is doesn't seem to matter really in a life. You know, what is important is that there's a willingness to be awake and to be clear about what arises in any one moment.
Yes.
And And as long as that's there, you know, whatever needs liberating, whatever needs letting go of, will be let go of.
Yeah, we'll be seen
Um,
for what it is.
you know, and because, you know, for a lot of people, especially at this point where there's a lot of talk about awakening, you know, and a lot of people haven't had the big awakening type experience that you've had, you know, that
No, I
total
wouldn't.
shift. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say that it's more gentle to have the kind of awakening that you had, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are expecting this big kind of seismic moment where everything suddenly becomes clear, but actually it can be very disorientating, and it's almost like everything happens very, very quickly. Things need to be addressed. Like 5 years can sound like a long time, but there was all sorts of things in that 5 years that were really looked at, and looked at in a lot of detail, and looked at again, and it was very, very painful and difficult. It was almost like a huge contrast between how I had been living and bringing this physicality, this apparent physicality, in alignment with truth. A
Mm-hmm.
very painful process. And so if it happens, if the awakening appears to happen in a much more gradual way, it's almost like these things are dealt with simultaneously, rather than in a way that is hugely contrasting.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, people can really struggle with
Yes.
the the shift in the way that I experienced it. And
Mm.
certainly, I had periods of time where I thought I was going completely insane, but I was seeing this from a clear place. It's
Mm.
um, it's so interesting to witness insanity from clarity. And it's almost like you're completely powerless to do anything. You can see this dysfunctional behavior. You can see these dysfunctional tendencies in a lot of detail often. And
Mm.
it's almost like you're powerless because the fan is turning, and all you can do is be present with it, see it.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
minute we try and change it, we're coming from the separate self again. We're coming
Yes.
from that contracted, conflicted place. And so it can feel totally counterintuitive to just be with that and see that from
Mm.
awake presence and trust. That's faith, actually, trusting that everything is going to unfold as it will. And the more we take our
Yes.
hands off the wheel, the less power we give it. And that is
Yes.
actually what's required in order for it to eventually dissolve. Of course, without
Mm-hmm.
having any intention to get rid of anything, just being
Mm.
completely innocent with it.
Yes.
It takes practice. It's not
Yes.
easy.
And you know, I guess what I'm seeing more and more is that either way, whether there's a big shift or a gradual shifting, the undoing just has its own momentum
Yes,
somehow, you know,
yes,
and that's what we can trust, you know, when
yes,
it happens either way,
yes.
you know, I mean, that's what I've come to see.
Yeah,
Um,
everything has its own pace and rate, and we're not in charge of how that happens. All we can be is true to truth,
yes, yes,
and be mindful of where attention is being placed,
mm-hmm, yes,
and meet everything from there.
mm-hmm, yeah,
The momentum of conditioning is so strong, it's easy to get pulled away from clarity and into separation. And so
yes,
there's a vigilance that's required, and I feel a commitment, and also a patience and a self-love, because this is innocent stuff, really. It's a question
oh
of,
yes. It's so true. I mean, you know, it's like it is innocent and it's part of the separate separation and the division to see ourselves as guilty. of stuff, you know, guilty of conditioning, guilty of things that need to come undone. And, you know, it's like, it's all totally innocent.
Yeah, and all of that is seen and met from wholeness, from clarity, that the idea of separation is simply that. That's the amazing thing, isn't it, about all of this, that actually apparent duality exists within unity. That actually there is no separation anywhere that I can find, and I've looked. So it's about
Well,
balance.
it's like,
I think there's a
yes.
slight lag, so I think if I jump in, I'm sorry about that. I don't know quite what's happening with the stream there. Seems like you finished speaking and then so apologies about that.
Oh, I think what we'll do is we'll hand over to Jim, who joined us. I'm just going to undo your mic. Jim, do you want to come on with your camera too? I've unmuted you. Hello, Jim?
Can you hear me?
Hi,
Yes, we can hear
Jim.
you.
Oh, cool. I never used this before. I don't have a camera.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me see. I don't know what to ask. I'm just trying to see how this worked. Well, I've been doing that self-observation thing. Is there any tips on that? I just don't quite know exactly what you do.
Okay, so when you say self-observation, what are you observing? What is
Uh,
this self that you're observing?
Mostly my body. My mind just kind of goes on and on. I try to feel how my body feels.
Okay, so is it kind of an experience of the body looking at the body? Is that how you would describe it?
It's more like I'd say inner tube, like your inside, and you can feel the body
Okay.
inside.
Well, maybe let's just do a little bit of inquiry, shall we?
Jim, can I just suggest that you get very close to the mic?
To the mic? Okay. Can you hear me better now?
That's better.
Yes, very much better. That's great. Thank you.
So I would ask you something, Jim. I'd ask you, what is it that is aware of the physicality that you take to be yourself?
Just like kind of like an inner blankness is aware of it.
Okay, so what knows that?
There doesn't seem to be anything there.
Right, okay. Can you see how the mind is always wanting to give it a label?
I'm trying not to think.
Right, but inner blankness. So there's two words there. So it's blank and
Yeah.
it's inside.
Okay. So those aren't accurate.
Well, have a look. This is the interesting thing about it. You know, it's always worth taking it to your direct experience. Is it inside? Can you be sure?
No, probably just all over.
Ah, but have a look. You know, this isn't, we're not looking to the mind for the answer. That's the wrong place. Something sees thought, right?
Uh-huh.
So what's that?
What's his thought?
Mm-hmm. Something or nothing.
Well, the thoughts are just there.
But something sees it, right?
Yeah.
How else would you know? This sounds like a stupid question, doesn't it?
How else would I know what?
How would you know the thoughts were there if something didn't see it?
I wouldn't.
Right, exactly. So we don't have to know what it is. That's not important. The validation that something's aware of the thought is enough. So then you can apply that investigation to other perceptions as well.
Oh, like feelings and...
Yeah, like emotions, definitely. Yeah. The apparent physical form called Jim. Does something see that or not?
Yeah.
And is it the same something that sees the thoughts? Or is it a different something?
Same. So I just keep doing that?
It's about validating the awake awareness. So I've just given it a label, but there is something that's aware of thought. There is something that's aware of the body. There is something that's aware of emotions. Can it be found?
Not in any particular place.
Exactly. Can it be denied?
No.
Right. So there's a simplicity to this. The mind wants something better.
Miracle!
Yeah, there's an absolute simplicity. So it's about really how simple can we be?
Yeah.
And the mind will get hooked into some aspect of experience. So it's about bringing the attention back to the simplicity of what's here and validating it.
Looks like somebody else joined now.
That's okay. We can still chat.
You can grill him for a while.
Am I grilling you, Jim? I'm sorry about that. Nice to talk to you.
Okay.
Oh, we just lost the second person. Just come back on. Jim, it looks like you're going to be grilled for a bit longer, unless you've had enough.
Leave it on a stick. Yeah. Well,
it's always... Go on. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I've been on watching these things for so long and asked so many questions, I've literally run out of questions anyway.
Well, that's a good place to get to.
Yeah.
You know, often we're looking to someone else for the answer to get that validation, when really it's about our direct experience and investigating that. Because an answer someone else gives you is never enough, is it?
No, it's just
you need to know it for yourself. And there's a difference between knowing it in the mind and knowing it experientially. There's a vast difference. Nobody has this. It's here already. All that's needed is to notice it. And because there are distractions that appear to grab attention, it seems to pull you away from the simplicity of what's here, recognizing what's here. That's all. Nothing complicated.
all my questions disappeared. This is a hell of a conversation.
That's perfect. It often happens during Skype sessions that the mind just completely settles down. That's beautiful. Because the mind doesn't know anything. Something knows. Something sees. Something's never unavailable. Something's not separate from what it sees, what it knows. And when we don't recognize that, we suffer. We forget. We forget ourselves.
I really hate to say anything right now.
That's okay.
I'm starting to wonder how you talk if you're in that state all the time.
I don't say a lot. I don't do small talk anymore, that's for sure.
Well, I had to learn small talk years ago. Never into it, but I figured I'd better learn it for social reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ask about the weather, stuff like that. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's in Arizona here. The weather's just hot. 150 degrees.
It's a bit of a paradox doing these things online, because that it seems like there's a need to talk, but really there isn't.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
We can be still.
Yes.
And that invites others into that stillness too.
Yeah. Exactly.
So Jim, there's no need to talk. And it's so much more precious to just allow that absence of thought to be what it is.
Yeah.
Well, if we all don't talk, we just sit here and hum.
Actually, Rule just said so much silence throughout this talk with Jim. Very beautiful. Here's somebody who appreciates it.
Beautiful. It really shows us how much we speak unnecessarily.
Yes. Yes.
There's a thought. When your mind does fill with thoughts and you're just thinking too much, is there a trick to making it halt?
Okay, so simply notice that. Bring clarity to that. So just notice that something's aware of it. Doesn't matter what the experience is. What this is about is validating that permanent presence, irrespective of what's filling the space. Something's aware of the presence or the absence of thought. Is it affected? Does it judge? Is it ever unavailable? What's your experience? Every moment's inviting that investigation. Every moment.
Karen, there is another question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to read this out to you, and
Sure.
Jim, you can you can continue your investigation as Karen has suggested.
Nice to meet you, Jim.
So,
Thank you.
thank you for coming on, Jim, and being willing to not have any thoughts, nothing to say. So, old lizard tongue says, I am you, you are you, there's no me. What is love to you? Namaste.
Ah, beautiful question. Love is my total devotion to myself, as myself, serving life from that place, with no divisive self-interest, simply being in service of the movement of life, without an agenda, just responding to what's happening. That to me is devotion, love. Such a difficult thing to try and articulate, actually, what is love. Can go in so many different ways in terms of answering the question. But really it's about, as I see it, total devotion to the clarity of presence. Because there is no separation. Separation's known to be imagined. And when there's a movement from there, everything is recognized to be a facet of that awake awareness, an expression, a manifestation. Yeah, love is not a feeling. It's a way of being.
Yes, I love what you said. And it's like, you know, for me it's like the willingness for everything to just be exactly as it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to be in awe of that.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrate it, to bow to it, to be in service of it, like you said, Karen.
Yeah.
You know, just that devotion to that.
Yeah.
And to me, what's so interesting is then how that gets lived out in relationship to others, you know, seeming others.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the, for me, that's been one of the places of the deepest undoing and the deepest learning of true love, you know, which is without any expectations.
Yeah. Allowing everyone the space to be themselves.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Being open really to all the ways life is expressing.
Mm.
Meeting life as it is.
Yes, and trusting that movement.
Mm-hmm.
Trusting however it shows up as that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be experimental here and just suggest that we were just willing to spend a few minutes just being in this, since it's so here, since it's so present, and somehow it's, yeah. How do you feel about that, Karen?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Mm. And just to say, if there's any more questions, feel free to ask. They're welcome too.
Seems we've had a couple of people join, additional people join the hangout.
Okay, good.
If anyone would like to ask a question? Seems we've had a couple of people join. Additional people join.
Okay, good. Somebody needs to go off their YouTube thread. Actually, Roll, you're okay. It's West Lily.
Couple of people join.
Actually, it's Roll 2, yes. So you need to stop or mute your YouTube window, otherwise we get a feedback loop. So would either Rule or West Lily, can't read your name. Would you like to ask a question, or are you just here to share the silence? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, hold on. I'll unmute you. Hello? Yeah?
Hello?
Westy?
Yeah.
Hi.
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 So I just wanted to ask something about living sort of in alignment with your own truth. So for a couple of years, I've been embracing all the pain body. And then over the last 4 months, I've been following Rupert Spira and dropping into the awareness, or being aware of being aware.
Yeah.
And so I thought,
sorry to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
Can I just suggest that you turn your screen so that your head's kind of not cut off at the top? Is that possible? Just to make for a nicer viewing experience for people. Okay. All right, go ahead. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so I was under the impression that life situation didn't really matter too much, that I could rest as the awareness, embrace everything in my body, and that was, I was sorted. I didn't have to worry about the life situation. But then this squirrel came running into my bedroom the other day. And I went downstairs and sort of told my dad, my parents, because I'm still living at home. And then I went out to the dentist, came back, and they'd gotten pest control round and put traps in my room. And just, really hurt me. I wasn't expecting it to be painful, but because I've been becoming more conscious, it really cut me deep. And then for a couple of hours I was sort of sitting downstairs just with these traps upstairs, trying to embrace the feelings, and rest as the awareness. But it wasn't working. I couldn't find peace there. And eventually I went upstairs and moved the traps, and then I was at peace. So I was just wondering, can you find any situation, or do you have to act and align yourself?
Okay. There's a number of things that were coming up as you were talking, and the first thing really is to recognize that you've associated awareness with a state. You've associated it with peace, right? And peace looks a certain way according to how you have decided peace is going to look. So if peace doesn't look like that, then there's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So, and also the way you're describing awareness, resting as the awareness, there's a duality there. Can you see that? There's awareness and then there's everything else.
Say again, please.
So the way you've described it, there's awareness and then there's everything else. So resting is the awareness and then there's the experience.
Yeah.
So it's almost like being used as a way to escape the experience as well. There's lots of things in there that we could look at. So the way I like to describe this, really, it's a bit like there's no stages, but it appears as if there is stages. So we could say stage 1 is being identified with the body, being separate. And stage 2 is like recognizing awareness as the ultimate permanent state of being, which is what you ultimately are. So it's like we've moved from one aspect of duality, believing I'm separate, to another aspect of duality, believing I'm just the awareness, and then we need to get rid of all this other stuff, which isn't particularly favorable. So it's about integrating those two aspects. So there's a very specific way that I usually support people to do that, and that is to validate the awareness through your everyday living experience. And then we can take the inquiry a little bit deeper. Is it separate from what it sees? So what this does, what this inquiry does, is it actually shows you experientially that awareness knows everything. Everything that you're experiencing, the body, there's an awareness of the body. Thought, there's awareness of thought. All manner of emotional states, there's awareness. So it's about seeing if awareness is always present, if it's affected by what it sees, does it judge what it sees. So from that perspective, it's like we're reacquainting ourselves with what's always here, what's always available. And then we can take things deeper. Not that there is any depth to this, but it's like the inquiry moves on another stage. And that is there separation between awareness and experience? So no matter what form experience takes, is there separation between awareness and experience? Can we find a separation? So that shows you, when you do this in your experience, that nothing is separate, that actually it is what's appearing, as well as the knowing of what's appearing. So we move from an intellectual understanding to an experiential one. And that only happens through repeated validation, repeated inquiry. So we could look at what is peace for you. What have you identified as peace? Does awareness know that? And does it equally know something that's not peaceful?
Can you say that again?
It's about finding where the landing places are. So there's been a few landing places from what you've described. One is peace as a state. So you then take that back to the awareness. That's what I would encourage you to do. Awareness knows that. So that's a state. So when the experience doesn't feel peaceful, does awareness know that as equally as it knows this peaceful state? Mm-hmm. So then you can try it with other experiences as well, to see if awareness knows them as equally as it knows the other things that are arising. Because experience is just one thing after another thing after another thing. It just morphs into different forms. Experience doesn't begin, it doesn't end, it's just here. So the question is is awareness aware of it or not? Now, there's a huge difference between recognizing awareness and being identified with the experience. One's suffering, one's not. So it makes huge experiential difference. So this is about committing to the awareness and seeing everything from the ground of awareness. And because there's so many distractions operating, it appears as if the attention is taken away from the awareness. So it's about keep coming back to the simplicity of recognizing awareness and seeing everything from the ground of awareness. That answers all questions, because you know it yourself directly. You don't need to look anywhere else. It's not about a permanent state of peace. States come and go. It's about recognizing what's permanently here all the time.
What is it about? You say that there's a difference between suffering and not suffering.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say if you're in not suffering, is that not peace?
Right, but it depends how you've defined peace. You see? So what does not suffering look like? There can be great physical pain, but it doesn't necessarily mean the suffering. Depends how you define suffering. To me, suffering is this shouldn't be.
Yeah, yeah. But if there's something unethical happening that you think,
What's unethical?
in your opinion, if there's something.
There we are.
Okay, say your heart feels like something isn't right.
Okay.
And that it should be changed, but your mind is not letting you. So your mind's saying, no, I can't change that because I don't know, I'll lose my job or they'll judge me or whatever. Okay. If you don't follow your heart and you follow your mind,
I understand what you're saying.
Would that create suffering for you?
I prefer not. It's interesting, isn't it? It's really not about my experience. This is about me supporting your inquiry so that you're clear in your experience. That's how I see it. Okay. So it depends how you define suffering. And also, it isn't a feeling good or a feeling bad. This is another thing that tends to be very stereotypical. You know, if it feels good, then it's right, and that isn't always how it is. There's right action that can arise, even if there's an emotional disturbance that doesn't feel good. So it really depends where we're seeing from and where we're responding from. And the only way that right action starts to move us, the awareness starts to move us, is if we commit to the awareness, commit to noticing the awareness. Because then it starts to happen spontaneously. It's not about feeling good, feeling bad.
Mm-hmm.
So we recognize the awareness, we keep coming back to recognizing the awareness. Then the conditioning starts to fall away on its own. because it's seen from the awareness and the behaviors aren't supported from separation, seen from a different place.
Can I come in on this?
Sure.
Can I just ask you your name?
Chris.
Chris. Okay, Chris. Because your screen name here, your thumbnail name seems a bit weird. Okay, Chris. What I'm hearing is that what's difficult for you to see is that even this distinction, which is a very heartfelt distinction between what feels right and what doesn't, ultimately is, can be seen to be a concept that you have, and when awareness moves, it will do what seems right to the mind and to the heart, but in a direct way. It will move that way just because it moves that way, not because it's right.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult one to give up because there's an innocence and a purity in the heart that has a certain knowing, but even that knowing at some point needs to be given up. And it can be seen, what Karen is pointing to.
What I noticed in my own process was that judgments and emotional disturbances associated with this idea of me showed me how my mind had been conditioned to see and experience, and how the emotions had been conditioned to see and experience. And so the more I recognized what's permanently here, the more I didn't get stuck in a state of, oh, this is what awareness is because it's peace. This is what awareness is because it's love. Because that's associated with the conditioned mind's idea of what that is, rather than the truth behind it. So I would investigate all your landing places. When you think you've found it, you haven't. What knows? There's a deeper recognition behind the experience. That's what we need to validate. It doesn't look a certain way. You notice when we believe it looks a certain way, we're always trying to create that or get there, and how much conflict that gives rise to, because it's not accepting of what's here now. I don't want this, I want that. When I've got that, I'm okay. What knows that? It's always about what knows that. And is it separate from what it sees? What it knows? That keeps the inquiry very simple, very clean, and very direct. So all I did in the early days, when there was a lot of struggle, a lot of suffering, a lot of turmoil, was kept validating the awareness. Awareness knows grief, it knows joy, it knows frustration, it knows anger, it knows all of the passing states equally, and it doesn't judge any of them. But that's no good if you don't know that for yourself. What knows? What knows? What knows? What notices this? What's aware of this? Experience takes many forms. What's permanently here? How you meet emotional disturbance is also very important. If you're focusing all of your attention on the difficult emotional state and you lose sight of the awareness, it pulls you unconscious. So it's about seeing what's here from the ground of awareness and allowing it from the ground of awareness. It takes practice. It's a bit like being on a knife edge. One being transcendence, one being identification. So we're in the middle somewhere where these two polarities meet. Where they dissolve and there's just this. And just be patient with yourself as well. Kind. You can't do this wrong, it's just about where your attention is. The power's in the seeing, the knowing. It undoes everything. It's like magic. You can't do it. It does it. Rest there and see. See what happens. Really nice to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, and you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I just want to ask Will whether he wants to come in with a question.
Great to meet you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello, Grace. Hello, Karen.
Hi.
Well, first I was just joining because I enjoyed the silence together. And I thought it would be nice to see each other's face as well as we were sitting together.
Yeah, that's lovely.
But then, while you were talking with Chris, I find it difficult to validate awareness, as you are saying. It feels like I'm looking for something.
Ah, what sees that?
Mm.
You see how again there's an identification with an experience. It needs to look a certain way for it to be validated. The fact that something is aware of the experience is its own validation. It's nothing more complicated than that. Something's aware of this. That's it. You don't need to understand light, right? It's just here. It's the same with this. You don't need to understand it. It's immediate, direct, obvious. You look for it, that's an experience happening within it, as it. The searching is seen. The recognizing is seen.
Then mind always comes in and asks, Yes, but what sees it?
So see that.
Hmm.
Let me ask you something. What does the mind know? Anything important?
Not for sure.
When you know that the mind doesn't know anything, it's simply an appearance in something that knows. It's only when you get hooked into that it appears to have something to say, but actually, and it's given meaning according to the separate self. It's associated with that. But this is about seeing it from a deeper place, seeing it as it is. It's just an appearance, like sound or light or sensation is an appearance. It's always about what knows, not getting hooked into an aspect of what's appearing. It's like seeing a slice of pie without seeing the whole pie. So this is about recognizing awareness and seeing everything from the ground of awareness. So it's a bit like being on the top of the mountain and simultaneously being at the bottom of the mountain. You can be engaged in some personal situation, but at the same time see it from the context of awareness, of presence.
I guess there is a deep conviction that when it is seen, it should be joyful. So sometimes it is felt as joy, and then I would say, oh yes, that must be it.
Does it know grief as equally as it knows joy? That's worth inquiry, I think. You know, this isn't about the good stuff. This is about everything. How would the music sound with one note? How would you know you're happy if you're happy all the time? There's rich contrast here. It's beautiful. And how amazing is it to experience everything that's possible to experience and not be touched by it ultimately. There's something that's permanently here. There's a beautiful line from the Gita that someone once read out to me at a meeting in India. And it goes something like, the sword cannot cut it, air cannot dry it, fire cannot burn it. It's like there is the beauty to experience everything and know our permanent nature as awareness simultaneously. There's no contradiction. And life gives us every opportunity it can to validate our most fundamental nature. And at the same time, be here as we are. No illusion, just this. The validation is simply about recognizing something's aware and that it's not separate. You can't do validation. Validation's already the case. Notice it or not. You know, it's so interesting, isn't it, how we turn everything into something we have to do? nothing to do. Whatever needs to happen happens by itself. It's an ocean of silence here. It takes care of all the waves.
Karen, I'm very aware of the time, and this seems like a good place to end this conversation.
Karen, thank you, Grace.
It's great to have had the opportunity to take part. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you to everyone that joined in. It's great to meet you.
Yes, thank you to everybody who came on with your questions. And thank you so much, Karen. It's beautiful. I really, it's maybe the first time in these conversations that it really has felt just natural in the moment to give so much space to silence, and it's been beautiful. I really loved that. So thank you so much. And,
thank you.
You know, yeah.
I really enjoyed being with you all.
Yeah. So thank you all for watching also. And just to say, the next conversation that will come up is with Locke Kelly on Wednesday,
nice.
29th of June. And you'll find the detail on the living-from-love.com website. And namaste. Thank you.